Hi everyone, it's Professor Fisher, and I wanted to go over creating a simple MVC application where we know that MVC stands for Model, View, Controller. In this assignment, this is for IST 261, but this video can be used for IST 311 as well. But for this particular assignment, what it says is for the assignment, we want to create an MVC for whatever application you're developing. And your MVC will need to have at least 5 classes. It needs to have at least an application class that has a main method. It needs to have a controller class. You need to have at least one of the items, one model class. For the Vintage Sounds app, you could use the instrument class. A second model class that contains an array list of the model class objects, meaning that the second class would be a way to create an array list of instruments in this example. A view class is where you put your UI, your GUI. In this case, it's instrument UI. And then it does have some more criteria here that says when the application is launched, the main method is going to create an instance of the controller class. And so the idea of the model view controller is that the controller actually is the go-between between the model and the UI. So the controller gets the data from the model and then puts it into the UI and displays the UI. The controller then listens for any of the buttons or text fields, whatever you're going to be listening for in your app, and then takes action depending on which button you push. The controller class also creates a list of the model objects, and both the array list and its members. The controller class creates and shows an instance of the view class, which is what I just said, which should include the J text fields. I'm going through this hopefully quickly because I want to get to the code. When the view class is first shown, it should display the data from the first position in the array list. The view class should include buttons to allow the user to move forward and backward. And it also needs to have a way to be able to change the fields of a particular object, delete an object, add a new object, or exit the application. All right, let's take a look at my used car application. And what I did was I already did some of the coding, and I want to just walk through it. So if I tried to do all the coding in the video, it would just take too long. So I apologize that I'm just going to be showing this to you rather than walking you through it. But all right, let's start with the app.java. And so here's my main, and as it said in the instructions, the main creates an instance of the controller. And in my case, I call it car CNTL for the car controller. And I have car controller, and I give it a name, variable name equals a new car controller. So that transfers control over to here. And so if we look at what happens, so now right now in Java, it goes to the main first, and then in our case, main says instantiate a new car controller object. It comes over here. And you can see that I have the car controller implements the action listener, which is an interface, right? Because we have implements, and the action listener is what I will use to override action performed down here. Inside the car controller, I start by creating some variables. Now the navigation control right now, I'm not using that, but that's when we add our main menu later on. But I just left it in here. I'm going to create a car list, and the car list object is going to be my array list. So I say array list vehicle list is equal to a new array list. Then I have an instance of the UI, the car UI. And then in the constructor, I have the car list is equal to a new car list. So the car list is actually a class that I created. And notice over here under my source packages, I did create a separate package called controller, model, and controller, model, and view. Used cars was the original package that had everything in it, and I've moved a few of the classes around. So right now the model has car and car list and vehicle. Eventually I would move employee, motorcycle, and truck up there as well, but for right now I just wanted to move the ones I was going to use in this example. All right, so then once I instantiate my car list, which creates my array list, I actually have a, actually let's go look at it. I have a so here I create an array list of vehicles And then in my constructor, I say create new car list, and I just have 3 hard-coded cars listed there. I add them to the array list. But what I wanted to show you down here on line 32 is that I have a get car list which returns an array list. And so that's what's happening over here when I say list on line 29 equals the car list dot get car list. That gets the array list of cars and it puts them into the variable called list. All right, let me scroll down a little bit. Lines 32, 33, and 34 are setting up the car UI, which we'll take a look at. And the car UI says, okay, create a new car UI, and I'm going to pass it the list of cars. And the car UI will take the first item in the list and display that. And then when the user clicks on the next button, it'll show the next one. And if they click on previous, it'll go backwards. Line 33 has the car UI, I set it to visible. And then line 34, right now I'm just adding one action listener for one of the buttons. And you'll see I have other buttons there, but right now I'm adding the car UI.previous button.add action listener. So then down in my override action performed, line 40, I cast the action event E as a object. So I have object action equals E.getSource. If the action that the user performed was clicking on the previous button, notice I have to say the car UI dot prev button because I'm actually referencing the class car UI. There's no previous button in the controller. And then I just say, if that's the case, then I'm going to check and make sure that they're not already on the vehicle that's in the very first position, which is position 0. If you are, I just printed a message to the screen saying you're on the first item in the list, just for testing purposes. But if you're not on the first one, then you can go backwards. And so then what I did was I said the car UI dot current vehicle minus minus. That keeps track of where we're at in the array. And then I have car UI dot refresh to be able to display the new car. And you'll see that in the car UI. All right, so this is the controller. The idea is that the controller implements the action listener and handles all of the events in this particular assignment. Let's continue on. So we already saw the car list. Let's see if there's really nothing else here that I think I need to go over. So next big thing would be the car UI. Now, I did do something different for this time. I actually used the scene builder within the NetBeans. So that made creating my UI really easy. So when I first created it, I did file, I clicked on the project. It will be down here in the view. So if you right click and you go to new and you say JFrame form, then what happens is it'll bring you up to something similar to this. I'm actually in the car UI right now, and this is the form that I used to create my interface, my GUI. And so right now the only 3 fields I wanted to display were make, model, and year, just to kind of give you guys an example of how this works. So over on the right-hand side, you can see, let's see, we have properties. Let me just click on one of the components. Let me fix this window a little bit here. Reset windows. Whoops. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. And let me expand my project again. I can get rid of the navigator here, move this over. All right, projects, here we go. What I wanted to show you was the palette. So when you first come in, I added a panel on top of my frame, right? Because that's where we put our text fields. And then all I did was I dragged over a couple labels for the car make, the car model, and the year. And then I dragged over some text fields, which are right here. And so why don't we do this? Let me move all my buttons down, and I'll add another field. And then we can talk a little bit about the buttons as well. So let's add another label. Actually, let's put the label down here. Let's do this. And I'm going to make it big. And then I'm going to make this like a message area. So I'm going to delete the default text. Actually, let me do it over here so you can see it. So I have this selected, right? When I have this selected, over on the right-hand side is my properties. Now, I don't have time to go through how to do swing and GUI in this video, so I'm just going to show you some of the things that you need. But definitely, if you need more information on how to create this, there's some courses in LinkedIn Learning that you can look at, and there's also lots of other resources out there. But all right, so the variable name, I don't want it to be JLabel4. I'm going to change this to be message. Okay, and then if I go to the properties, the properties is where you can change the font. So let's see what the font is for this. Well, down here is the accessible name. And actually what I'm looking for is the text field. So, oops, there it is. Here's the font. So let's change the font to 14 to make it a little bigger. And then here's the text that shows up here. And there, like I said, there's a lot of other fields here, but I'm just going to leave this blank because I don't want any messages to be there. But now what I can do is I can use this JLabel field down there to be able to, did I delete it? I think I might have. I might have deleted it by accident. Let me go to the source code real quick. Let's see, did it? Nope. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, it's there. All right, good. All right, so now, I don't know why I can't see it. Okay. All right, so once you have all your fields added here, so you can go through and this is another one where I took out text field. No text. I changed the font size to 14. And then I added my buttons. I have next, I have previous. Now when I clicked on the next, if you double click on that button, it will automatically generate code, okay, that will take you to, so here, it automatically added a next button action performed to my code. Now the rest of these are blank, okay, because I'm going to actually implement these in my, my controller class, because that's what the assignment says. Now, in order to do that though, when you add these, let's take a look at the properties. You might notice that they are listed as private. So let me see where, okay, it might be under code, yeah. So they're listed as private, so I have to change that to public, otherwise I cannot access them from my controller. So if you're gonna go ahead and use this, you need to update these if you're going to use the scene builder here. So you just need to update them so that they're public. So now I can access them in my controller. All right, and let's go look at the code for this window here, for this GUI. And in the code, so what I'm doing is I do want to keep track of what vehicle's being displayed. And in this case, it's I want to start with the vehicle in position 0. I'm creating an array list called list because I want to use that to represent the list that comes in from the controller. So here the constructor car UI has an array list of vehicles called list. If I go back over to car control real quick, you'll see that when right here on line 32, I pass it the array list of cars. And so at the very beginning, it goes to init components, and then, I have this dot list equals list, so that now the variable list on line 17 is now globally available to my car UI. And you'll see why that's important in a second. In my constructor, I init the components, I set the text to be the current vehicle, so that'll be the very first one, which in my case is a Chevy Cruze. And then I did I added a method called public void refresh, which basically just refreshes and gets the current vehicle. And that is what I'm using when I go backwards from the controller. All right, and let's go down to the bottom here. So here's what I was talking about. So I actually had private void next button action performed. This got created because I double clicked on the button. I could delete it and put everything back over into the car UI, but I just wanted to show you how if you were using the scene builder, you could actually add all of your your actions right here in the code. So if you're going to the next car, then I'm going to have to add one to the current vehicle, and then I reset my make, model, and year text fields. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's go back over to car CNTL, and you can see here's where the previous button where I had to add the action listener. So now that I added those other buttons, made them public, let's go ahead and do another one. So let's do car UI dot, and let's do the delete button. Okay, dot add action listener. Okay, now the other thing to notice is that in the assignment, you have to be able to go next and backwards. You have to be able to add a new one, modify an existing one, and delete one. So I'm not going to show the code for all that. I do want you guys to have a little bit of work to do to you know, kind of learn some of this on your own. But let's go ahead and see if I want to delete one. So let's say if the action is equal to the car UI dot delete button. Okay, if that's the case, then think about it. What do we want to do? If that's the case, we want to remove that item from the array list. Okay, so we can do that. We can say we probably want to make sure that there are vehicles in the list. So let's do if list.size. And I seem to be stuck here. There we go. If list.size is not equal to 0. So as long as there are some in the list, then I'm going to do list.remove. And I want to remove the car at the current vehicle. And what's nice about using an array list is I don't have to keep track of my indexes. It will automatically update the array list, and I do need to reference, the current vehicle that is in the car UI. So car UI dot current vehicle. And that would let me delete them. And once you add the logic for adding, that will be great because then you can add them back in. What else? All right, let me go ahead and run this so you can see how it looks. And here it is. Okay. Very simple. So the very first one was the Chevy Cruze. If I click on previous, you'll see down here in the application window that it says I'm on the first item, so I can't go backwards. I can go to next, which is the Ford Escape, and then the next again. If I click next again, I'm going to get an out of bounds exception because I did not check to make sure when you click on next that you're at the end of the list. Hint, hint, you want to do that. All right, so I can go backwards now. Let's go back. We got back and back. Okay, now we added the delete, so let's delete the Chevy Cruze and see what happens. So we deleted it. Now, when I deleted it, it didn't update, but let's see if I go back. If I go to Subaru, whoops, see, I knew it was going to happen. There we go. So you can see it's no longer in the list, but you probably want to refresh what is getting shown on the screen when you do the delete. And like I said earlier, you want to add a logic to it so you don't hit this out of bounds error. So two things. One is in the delete, you want to use the refresh to be able to get a new vehicle to be displayed. Okay. And I think that's about it. And you want to be able to update. So if I maybe change the Ford to something else, you would want to be able to click on the update button and have that be reflected. You'd want to also be able to add new. So if you click on add new, maybe it brings up a blank form that you type in, and then maybe when you click on add new, it automatically adds a new one. So that's kind of up to you on how you handle the logic for the add new. But I hope this video helps, and I know it's a little bit long, so I apologize in advance.